everybody. It is Tuesday, May 27th. It feels like Monday, but it's Tuesday. Shy, what's up? How was your long weekend?
It was good. I got through my engagement shoot yesterday.
Nice.
I can't wait to see how the photos turn out. I wish there was a way I can see how messed up my smile was during the process because now it's all or nothing. But
I mean, you'll get it in post. There's AI now. You just like swap in someone else's face. It's fine.
yeah, yeah, potentially I could definitely do that. Also, X was like down all week and that was annoying, and also gave me a little glimpse of how little I will get my news if X is ever down. Like I have no idea if anything
Yeah.
big dropped on Friday or Saturday. Like I was like, oh my god, I hope Trump doesn't announce some kind of major deal with China when X is down because I have no idea if it's real or not because I don't trust legacy media anymore, etc.
I mean, it's crazy. Like it was down, but it wasn't like very apparent it was down. It just felt like it was like a little off. But like mine was working, then it wasn't, then it was, and then I noticed everyone was like, "What the hell's going on?" Uh, but for you, I mean, that's your audience, so you're probably like, guys, get it together."
I have no self worth without
Yeah.
X. So I was like, I don't know. I just looked in the mirrors, listening to sad songs all day on
Oh
Friday
my
and Saturday.
god.
I'm like, who am I?
You could always go over to Blue Sky. I hear it's interesting there. I can't do it. Like when Blue Sky started, I was like, I can't rebuild. Like I had one like viral meme go nuts a couple years ago, and that's where I got like some followers. I'm just like not trying to rebuild at this point. I'm staying. I'm going down with the ship basically. Um,
Retirement phase, essentially, you're in.
exactly. Let's talk about you getting recognized this weekend.
Yeah, I got recognized. Two fans came up to me. It was great. It was funny because this is actually the second time a couple, I think a couple weeks ago, came up to me at my dog park I go to, and I again over the weekend, same thing. A couple came up to me, and yeah, it's definitely interesting. My fiance was just like, she didn't believe me when I told her.
Oh,
She
she
was there with.
wasn't there?
No, I went to the bathroom.
Oh
That's the thing. Yeah,
no.
so it's just it's cool. It's definitely a new feeling. And yeah, I don't know how to react to those things. I don't think I'm that special. I'm just like, oh hey, what's up,
Did they ask
type
for
of thing.
stock advice or they're just like, hi? And you're like, hey,
No,
like,
just hi, and they were just asking like, are you that guy? Like,
oh no.
they enjoy the show.
Yeah, guys, you know what? Come up to us on the street. As long as you're not creepy, it's totally fine. So if you're creepy, don't do it. But if you're normal, come say hi, you know? Not as big a deal as Shy, but like, I'm out and about too. I'm out in the world. Wave hello. Let's check in on futures because we had a little bit of a blink situation with the tariffs pushed back to July 9th. People did not see that coming. And so the Dow is up about 500 points in the pre-market. We closed in the green to end last week, but we're delaying those EU tariffs. So timing's a little surprising, but this is the proposed 50% import tariff on the EU. So that's getting pushed to July 9th, which is almost my birthday. And the futures are up. So a lot of people are very happy about this for now. It was unexpected. So I think that was a nice surprise for investors coming off a long weekend. A bit of a relief in the markets. And the Fed reaction, Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashari urging caution on rate moves, noting tariffs raise inflation and dampen growth. Tesla up 2% on the news, also after Elon Musk said he was going to start sleeping in the office again. Shai, have you ever slept in an office before?
No, but again, I've never owned a business where
True.
my reputation's on the line.
Yeah, I've never tried to go to Mars. I feel like that's a little. I think I almost did one time. And I was working at a company that was trying to sell, and we were working with a PE firm. And it was one of those things where I realized, like, all the associates, I was much younger, and we were just waiting until 3 in the morning for someone to give us feedback on one slide. And we're just like sitting there, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to go home because I'm just going to turn around and be back. And that was, you start to reevaluate things. But Elon is back. You also made some waves over on X when it was working. You had a hot take about Apple. Walk us through your thoughts on Apple lately because you've had some more aggressive opinions as time has gone on.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is me talking poorly about Apple with a AirPod. My phone is right here.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm saying when I say they're becoming the next Intel, I'm not talking about the present. I'm talking about the future, and that's really important to indicate the difference of the statement I'm about to make, because 20 years ago, people viewed Intel like in the Nvidia lens today. They weren't just the best and biggest chip maker at the time. They were truly at the center of the computing universe. And everyone everyone the brightest people on the street just like could not predict them just like being red for the next 20 years. They thought this is the biggest company in the world. Like as we evolve as society, they're gonna be at the center of it. But things innovate. Technology innovates consistently, and you have to prove the ability to stay in front of it and capture it in order to maintain your moat. And for Apple, like come on, like Apple like is they've struck out since Steve Jobs. Like clearly have struck out. They've been in a slow form of decline. You can say coast. Like I mentioned coasting, but coasting is just another word for a slow decay in a way. Because in technology, you consistently have to innovate. So like the role of Apple Intelligence was last year supposed to be this renowned innovation. Like, oh, finally, Apple's innovating, capitalizing on this new thematic. That was not a breakthrough, and it was an absolute dud. It was purely a hedge, clean UI, but it was just like a familiar voice where like nothing really changed again on this innovation that Apple was going to provide. Because under the surface, like it wasn't really changing how people compute. It was just making sure they didn't leave. But even then, like I don't think it moved the needle at all for Apple users. And I think that after seeing what Google, Meta, Microsoft are doing, where they're absolutely rereading the interface playbook in real time to capture the latest and greatest in AI, Apple's version of AI was just reactive. It wasn't generative. So they're just being defensive, and not in the model sense that the other hyperscalers are doing, but in a strategic one where we have to do something because we just are so behind the AI race. And even then, wasn't that revolutionary. So I think that you have to ask yourself, like, fine, like everyone and their mother has iPhones, Apple products, etc. What's why? How are they at risk of becoming the Intel? Well, again, like I mentioned, back then, Intel was the biggest chip maker of our time, the best, but they didn't pivot quick enough. It clung on to the x86, the minimal improvements every single year, and they were dismissing what ARM Holdings was doing, which was creating the new blueprint of the new digital economy. They dismissed the cloud, mobile, and also Nvidia, because Nvidia was building a full stack platform for AI, and Intel didn't really believe in AI. Now they do, but back then they didn't. And they also saw AMD out execute them with their Zen architecture and also their Epic chips, and then they became a bigger CPU player than Intel itself. So like they missed that transition. Apple's at risk of doing the same thing because they have brilliant hardware. Clearly, I'm using only Apple devices, but their interface model is not capitalizing the consumer AI theme that you assume they would, and that's the risk because you just saw OpenAI acquire that talent. I'm blanking on his name.
Oh, Joni Ive. Johnny Ive?
Joni,
Joni Ive.
yeah,
I should
Joni
know how to
Ives.
say it. I don't. Sorry to that
So
man.
they acquired him, essentially his talent, because he was responsible essentially for making magic on the phone, like creating a phone magic and creating what the iPhone is today. I think the future isn't going to be consumers doing the tedious tasks of like scrolling, clicking on your phone, doing stuff with your fingers. It's going to be all intelligence. It's going to be built like the next computing layer is going to be purely simplifying intelligence where you wear something like they mentioned something around your neck or that can retrieve information, do everything for you without having to physically do it yourself. And I think that's why the new hardware in the future is going to be drastically different than what the hardware is today. I think I'm not saying Apple isn't incapable of building that next computing layer, but I think they're still trying to tackle or um, perfect or protect the last computing layer, and that's the mistake because they're integrating AI, but they're not really strategically getting ahead of what the next next era of compute is going to be. And I think that Siri 2.0 won't do it. I think that they're coasting, and I think that they haven't proven to me via Apple Car, Apple Intelligence, that brutal AR VR
I was
release
gonna
that
say Vision Pro. Oh my God.
yeah, they just have not proven to me in post Steve Jobs that they can innovate and capitalize. And AI, the AI tsunami that I keep saying on the show, it's coming a lot quicker than people assume. It's
Yeah.
coming. And Apple, they think they're at this massive ship that can survive that tsunami. Guess what? You're freaking the Titanic, so you don't get too cocky. Like, you could sink if you don't prepare yourself in time. And that's the risk of Apple becoming the next Intel, where they have so much cash, they're going to do financial engineering, but in 20 years, there's a world they're red the next 20 years because they cannot capitalize on consumer AI, and there's going to be a new competition that comes to light that has a new feel, new on where the consumers want AI into their devices, and that's going to create a new headwind. And who knows, that 30% app store fee that's they're relying on services, that might go away if AR VR takes off. Because guess what? Meta's becoming a massive player in that space, and they're creating a similar app store product that if everyone wore goggles, for example, and they only have a phone, why do you have to download an app on an iPhone? You don't really need to do that. So everything's at risk a bit. And I'm not saying the next couple of years, I'm talking decades, but I see a world where like my kids will view Apple as Intel, and I wouldn't be surprised by that.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think when you're at the top, when you're like Apple, it's probably very hard to make decisions about taking risks and innovating because you're just printing money. Everyone's got an
Mm-hmm.
iPhone. Like, you're just like, why, why get distracted? Let's double down. But to your point, the AI piece, especially, I want to ask specifically on that. But first of all, can we throw up that image again of the announcement? Because I don't know what you thought about this image of from the acquisition announcement, but it looked like an in memoriam. Like, I saw this, I'm like, who died? So just like a weird from like a corporate comms lens, bizarre. Like I get they're trying to like lean into like the gravity of the moment, but I saw this and I was like, oh my God, what happened to Sam Altman? Like, who is that? So anyway, that aside, I'm curious because I've been digging into this a little bit on, what's Apple going to do about AI? Some buzz around maybe they just buy someone, maybe they buy Perplexity, maybe they buy Anthropic. Do you have any theories about an M&A strategy that would catch them up in the AI space, or do you think they're the kind of company that's going to build on their own because that's normally what they do?
I think for I to answer your question on what I think they're gonna do, I think they have their WWDC event in like 2 weeks. I do think this summer they're gonna make a flashy acquisition,
Mm.
and I think it's going to come from a defensive place rather than an aggressive place, and that's the worst kind of acquisitions. But it's a must, and I think, like you mentioned, those tier three LLM plays, Perplexity, Anthropic. I think that's the low hanging fruit that will help them infuse AI into their hardware because I mentioned I think last week where like this next AI era that we're about to enter, or it's beginning already, like it's going to be won by not the hardware, but what hardware turns it's hardware that turns intelligence into interface. And it's not going to be in actual physical objects, but it's going to be in how they mediate our daily lives. And Apple OpenAI knows that. That's why they made that $6 billion acquisition, where it really wasn't a design move. Like they just want him to create this design for us. It was a vertical integration play where like the direct challenge to the incumbent that's been the monster in everyone's lives the past 20 years in personal computing is Apple. And for years, Apple has held the power by not dominating any kind of single specific product or metric, but it's because they own the full stack. They own the design, they own the silicon, software, distribution, and most importantly, user behavior. Everyone, like I mentioned, here, iPhone, AirPods. Everyone
Mm.
had, everyone has Apple products, but iPhone was like never truly just a phone. Like when it came, if you guys don't watch that BlackBerry movie, it was incredible
Yeah.
because I love Glenn. I'm blanking on his name,
Glenn
but
Powell?
love him. He's not Glenn
Same.
Powell. No, the guy from It's
Oh.
Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh, very
Glenn.
different.
But I love
I
him
was
as
like,
an
I love Glenn
actor.
Powell too. Let's talk about him. No, just kidding.
No, but like I mean, the iPhone was never really a phone. Like it was an ecosystem portal in a way because it fed into so many different. It was a spider web effect, a behavioral shift that just was a gate. It was a portal into so many different avenues for Apple's ecosystem. So like Apple understood something back then, or Steve Jobs did, that most companies didn't. That interface is the experience. The device is the platform. I think they lost their way in this, and I think that Joni Ives made that possible. He built the hardware that made software feel like magic, like I mentioned, those rectangle of glass and metal into objects of devotion, passion. Everyone has it. So I think that the emotional intelligence became Apple's mode. They lost that
Mm.
once Steve Jobs left, and I think that you're seeing Sam Altman try to capitalize that or replicate it. You might mention like I don't know, Sam's a little weird, but uh, uh, ChatGPT changed the world. Like
Oh
I think
yeah.
I like the that was probably the greatest innovation for consumers' lives since the iPhone was ChatGPT.
I feel like it's bigger.
It might be
I
even bigger. You're right, because like everyone uses it's everyone
well, we're
phrases it as a
still
verb now.
so early, but yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
to your point though about the emphasis on UI and like maybe the wrong way. They started before the WWDC, they always like leak out little things. There's always a big surprise or something. But one of the things they leaked out on Friday was like, oh, we're redesigning the UI and the device UI. And I'm like, I don't, who cares? Like, what are they going to do? Change the font? So I know this isn't like it in terms of what they're talking about, but I think what you're saying is like OpenAI is like thinking of this on a different plane where they're not boxed into like how does this come to life on this specific device. They're like, what is the whole ecosystem become and how do we pioneer that? And I think Apple, something like this, it's kind of like, eh. So I'm curious if you follow any analysts. Like, are a lot of analysts as worried as you are, or are people still pretty bullish on Apple?
I think again, a lot of the analysts, not all of them, a lot of them are backwards looking. They need to see the proof in the spreadsheets. They need to see
Yeah.
the tangible evidence. For me, I'm a thematic investor. I emphasize a lot of philosophy into the way I view companies and where they're trending towards. So I don't think that there's that many analysts who are saying this. But again, narrative falls price action is really, really towards analysts on the street where you see these price target moves. It's always based on what has happened already. And it's always just like, it's like the Jim Cramer effect where whenever he says something, oh, it's buy this, it's because it's made that massive move already. So he's just
Mm-hmm.
momentuming it, so
Yeah.
momoing it. So I think for uh, like this announcement they made last week, I'm like, all right, cool. I don't think that's gonna really move the needle. Like you can just, they're just they're these aren't just like normal features that they're these are just normal features what they're trying to make this announcement. It's not really behavioral rewrites where
Yeah.
I think that's they need a condition. A lot of the users are conditioned to expect AI now. Now, not as a bolt-on, but as some kind of core interaction model. It's something drastically different that's going to change their lives. The way ChatGPT did versus searching something on Google. And I think that AI agents is a really great way for Apple to kind of catch up to everyone else. And I wouldn't be surprised if they create something agentic AI in 2 weeks to like really show like the easiness of life where um, you used to have to like, oh, take a phone call, book something, put in your calendar, text someone. Maybe there's an agentic AI feature where you get that information and there's a default of whenever I hear this, you let my fiance know this, put in the calendar while you let her
Yeah.
know. It's all in a single loop. Maybe something like that. But again, like I don't think they have the talents in place to do that. So they're gonna have to acquire. And they
Yeah.
have not made an acquisition since Beats. And
Crazy.
I just think they have to, or they're gonna be left behind. And I honestly kind of hope there's a competing product against Apple because they have a monopoly. Like 30% take rate on
Yeah.
the App Store is disgusting. It's awful. And it would be great for them to be forced to innovate because there's new competition. Right now they have a monopoly. Fine, Android users. You guys love Android users,
Yeah.
but it's not really the same thing. So like I hope
Yeah.
this disruption wakes them up for them to innovate quicker.
Yeah, I think and it's interesting too. The more people kind of have are talking about concerns, the more leverage an Anthropic or someone else has in a negotiation where it's like you might need us more than we need you, which is wild to think about. And speaking of Apple, I read I think it was a report in the Wall Street Journal. Tim Cook wasn't even invited to Saudi Arabia, so was not invited on the girls' trip. If you guys know me, you love I talk a lot about the girls fighting, because men fight too. But that's either he wasn't invited or he didn't want to go. So now it's like, what's going on there? There's a lot happening. Speaking of we're on this subject of agentic AI. One company that has earnings reporting this week that has been trying to take some big swings there is Salesforce. And they just announced an $8 billion acquisition this morning. So they bought Informatica, which is a publicly traded company. They're a data management company. So they're trying to build this data infrastructure like we've been talking about. They want to expand Salesforce's AI and data integration capabilities. Informatica specializes in cloud data integration and governance. Obviously, Salesforce needs to kind of ramp this up because they're going so big on the AI agents, the agent force, as they say. They had a big event around agent force in New York last week. They were inviting like financial creators there and influencers. They're really trying to make this happen. And so I'm curious, I know this just came out, Shay, but based on what you know about what Salesforce is trying to do in Informatica, do you think this type of M&A is something other companies will be making as well? And what needs does Salesforce have that Informatica can give them?
So I think in this agentic AI world we're about to enter, like quality of data matters the most. It's the biggest rock. That's how you determine. That's how you determine the outcome of these agent quality is the data. Data is the fuel for the AI agents engine. So this deal makes sense for Salesforce because like I don't know, they're doubling down on that requirement to capitalize on the agentic AI future by acquiring Informatica, but I just think the business model is completely flawed for them now. Like I think CRMs aren't the AI tsunami is going to hit the CRM space first, where it's customer relation market essentially. Where um, what is there? It's such a low barrier of entry. Like yes, Salesforce has always been around for quite some time, but they're have never organically grown. It's always been acquisition of BI tools, and it worked in the early days of cloud era. That's how they were able to sell that platformization vision early in the cloud, where it's like we're gonna create all these BI tools, become the center of that ecosystem, the cloud ecosystem. It worked. AI, the agentic AI world is gonna be brutal for capitalistic ways where ServiceNow can easily create a Salesforce replicated product. A lot of these IT managements can just create their own internal CRMs. You're seeing CRMs are just add-ons essentially. They own a ton of data. The data is their moat. So that's why like them acquiring Informatica, like that's great because they're owning more data. But at $262 billion market cap, what is that AI tsunami won't wipe them out, but you have to ask yourself like, is there gonna be smooth um, course of action going forward for them? When I don't think there is. Like, they have a licensing business model. It's not consumption. So that's the reason why I love these data infrastructure players, where the quality of data matters a ton. There's a premium now on that. So these companies who make money out of thin air based on data consumption will do extremely well. Salesforce, I mean not Salesforce, Snowflake, for example, Cloudflare's got a certain component of that. You got Datadog, Confluent, etc. So like I think that CRMs who are based on a licensing model, seat-based model, are at risk because there's going to be new software companies to create a similar CRM product, which is not as difficult as you think it would be because there's AI agents who can do most of the job that CRMs could do. And I also think that there is a world where Salesforce has to price down their products because guess what? White collar jobs are going to get replaced in this agentic AI world about to enter. So these seat-based business models, that's a massive headwind. Teams of 10 will turn to teams of 6 in 4 or 5 years. That's being generous, maybe even sooner. So
Yeah.
now there's going to be less people for those licensing models for them, combined with new competitive headwinds from other competition that can create similar products or like put those CRMs into their own ecosystem. Like, why go external? Let's just keep it in house. And these AI agents will help us keep that in flow. Now, who's going to pay for that pricey CRM that Salesforce has?
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't know. That's the AI tsunami that's coming. That Salesforce is going to have to do a bunch of acquisition and BI tools early on to offset that, but I just don't think it's enough. I think they're not going to go zero. I think that CRM space will go turn into 2 or 3 names. Salesforce will definitely be one. I think HubSpot will be another, but HubSpot will get acquired by someone. And the other one will be a mid-market player. I think it's Monday.com, maybe Asana, but Asana sounds like they've just gone nowhere, and it's just
Yeah.
that owner's play toy at this point, the way he's acquiring it. But I'm very bearish on CRMs,
Yeah.
if you guys couldn't tell.
The way you laid that out, Cheyenne, like the displacement of white collar jobs, that explains because Agent Force is priced on a consumption model. So like that
Hmm.
explains, it's very obvious when you put it that way, but like of course they're throwing huge events for Agent Force and they're like agent this, agent like that's all they talked about their last couple of earnings calls. Because exactly what you're saying. There's gonna be fewer white collar seats. And yes, agentic AI is the future, but like also it's kind of an existential crisis for them where they got to get off this per seat model fast. Um, so they got to win in agentic AI, and how are they doing that? They got to bolster what they could offer. But I hadn't thought
Hmm.
about it that way of like, yeah, all these companies are on a seat basis for professional services, white collar jobs. What are the other business models they need to move to or grow
Well,
in order to counter that?
I mean, ServiceNow made that pivot with Raptors DB. Like, they're turning to a database consumption for their database.
Yeah.
Smart. But like, I don't know, like Workday, for example, that's like the blue chip company, but like that's purely seat based. They're gonna have to pivot to its consumption, and it's not a flip of a switch going from seat based licensing model to consumption, because it's like left brain or right brain for salespeople in the tech space. Like, selling a product from seat based to consumption is so different, and a lot of people think it's just a flip of a switch. Like, oh, just rephrase restate some of your phrases, and it's not a big deal. It's so different. There's a lag period as well. Confluent just actually turned into that 2 years ago, I think, and it turned into a 6 to 9 month headwind where that transition was kind of ugly. But even that, like, when you're worth a mega cap company level, like, there's opportunity cost that comes to play. Like Palantir, love Palantir. I think they're going to be opportunities from AI. That's why I went really hard early on with them under $10. They're a $300 billion company now. There's going to be opportunity costs because valuation has to catch up to them, but they're safe in this AI tsunami. They're past it. They're great. At 250 billion plus, you need to always ask yourself, what's the opportunity cost? Because this company won't go to zero, but it literally might not go anywhere. Look at Intel's charts. Intel's a perfect example of a company that was massive in a thematic that it was in an old world, not the new world we're heading into, and they could just stay there for a long, long time. I think Salesforce is going to be that, because unless they something drastically changes on AI agents, like, oh, perfect example, like, yeah. So my fiance was born in '99. If her parents bought Intel stock when she was born, they would be, I think, red. They would be red.
Whoa.
So that's like the crazy thing. And
Yeah.
she's 26. So like, there's be cautious on who you invest in now in this world we're about to enter, because it's the easy or good companies isn't good enough anymore. You have to invest in companies that will be around
Yeah.
and thrive.
Like a war cry. I think it's like empires fall. And like sometimes when you're in it, you got to zoom out. Like, the people that are on top aren't on top all the time. And so, like, exactly your style, Shy, is like, okay, who's the next empire? Finding those players. That was, of course, the opening bell. We are open today. The futures are still up. about 500 points in the green on the surprise tariff backtrack. I don't know, pause, backtrack, whatever it is. People like it. I want to talk about. We have some interesting earnings this week. We have some. We obviously talked about Salesforce. And we have some retail earnings coming later in the week. We also have Okta and Box, so some like cloud players. But reporting this morning, Temu parent company, Pinduoduo. And Shay, I know you had a readout on that. They had a rocky first quarter, so their earnings fell 44%. Q1 sales of 13.3 billion, missed expectations by nearly $1 billion. And the stock is down or was down over 15% in early trading. And so, Shay, you look at this: PDD's earnings miss, tariff-driven warning. Is this reigniting questions about broader U.S.-China trade dynamic? And are you seeing signs of a deeper economic decoupling? What would that mean for the markets?
Yeah, I do think this tariff war is making a lot of these regions, Africa, for example, like be more tailored to those in-house options like Jumia, for example. I think
Mhm.
Jumia's CEO made a comment that this tariff war is actually a tailwind for them because that they are excluding like the Temus out there because of all the expenses that it makes more sense for Jumia, and like Jumia is catching a bit from that. But regarding PDD, I mean, it's all gimmick plays. Like Temu, it's the most annoying product in the world. Like if you go on Temu, you're gonna get ads for Temu like forever.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's
it's like
aggressive.
it's aggressive, and they've always had such a low barrier of entry because they've just undercut everyone on pricing. They just sell the cheapest products out there, and I'm like, all right, well, that's no pricing power. You're just doing it based on quantity. It's not any kind of quality business model. And during a tariff war, when margins get stretched, you're screwed the most out of everyone
Yeah.
else. And their sales and marketing is almost 50% of their revenue. So that just shows like
Wow.
they have to pay up for marketing, no matter like in order to get demand for their product. That's not a business model you want to be part of. Like it's not. And it's just this is a great example of like if they're getting kicked off the table a bit and like you have to go sit over there and eat, you can't be at the table anymore because the plates are less and less from this tear forth because chefs trying to cut down on food. You're going to be a little squeezed out a bit, and I think that PDD they're dirt cheap. That's the issue. They're trading at 4 times their cash position, 4 times. So like, yeah, it might double and trade at 8 times. It's super cheap, but again, this is why it's so, like traditional metrics are so backwards looking for me, where the cheap can always get cheaper, and you usually have to pay up for quality, and that quality creates a defense mechanism for your investment because if it does dip, it will get scooped up. They're going to be a survivor winner in the future. PDD, I don't know. Alibaba's clearly the bread and butter. PDD is just like the flashiest numbers because they grow much quicker than their competitors because they're undercut everyone on pricing. But guess what? Amazon launched a competing product already. That's like
Yeah.
Temu competing. And just like you have to ask yourself, like being the cheapest isn't the best business model because people can just like match you on pricing. So then what? But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, under $100, it's dirt cheap, but cheap can always get cheaper.
It's also unfortunate. It's PDD. Every time you're saying I'm like PDD, P Diddy. They're going through it right now. I love the kids table metaphor. I feel like we should bring that back. Like they got pushed to the kids table. The sales and marketing too, that's insane. 50% revenue. It doesn't surprise me because they send me an email every 14 seconds, despite the fact I've never bought anything from there. Like I went to that
Yeah.
website one time and I was like poking around. I was like, there is no way I'm putting my credit card information in here. Zero chance. Like things are flying at me. There was like a wheel spinning. It was just like a mess. But they got my email based on that, and yeah, they're very aggressive in the marketing.
You also have to ask yourself, like, there's correlations. Like, if that's sales and marketing, if that comes down due to like pressure from stock market of like
Yeah.
you have to improve your margins because that was a massive margin miss. That's why it's down 20% almost this morning. Who's that going to affect? Meta makes so much money off of PDD. They spend
Yep.
so much money on all of Meta's products that if you see sale like PDD make an announcement sales and marketing is going to reduce,
Yeah.
don't be surprised that Meta's going to come down because Meta makes so much money off of Temu, so much. Like I forgot what the number is, but it's a staggering amount of their revenue is from Temu. Like you would never expect there's a customer concentration risk on Meta. There really isn't with Temu. I'm not saying there is, but it's like whoa. I want to say it was like a couple percent. I want to say a
I
wrong
wouldn't be
number, but
surprised though if that's half
yeah.
of their revenue. I mean, that is a fun exercise. Maybe for tomorrow, pull up a list of the top advertisers in Meta because it's always shocking. It's always like someone you wouldn't expect.
Well,
Um,
I mean, Temu, they spent 15 billion a year on Temu ads. So like,
oh my,
how much do you think Meta's getting from that? It's billions of dollars a year. So like, it's a substantial amount. That's
the
all
ads
we're
were
trying to say.
so bad too, and that's like, yeah, I come from the marketing world. It's like you can't just throw money at a problem. Like I remember the Super Bowl ads, and I was like, what just happened?
There's like
Like,
dozens of them on the Super Bowl.
I
It's like,
know,
how expensive is this?
but I was like, they look like they were like thrown together. Like, look, I don't want to like dump on a creative team, but I'm like, I don't understand what the brief said for those, other than they were like, great, we bought the ads, just figure something out. But sometimes the message matters. Um, let's skip around a bit to some other things going on in the markets today. Oh, we had actually news. Circle is finally ready to IPO, according to reports. So this is a company behind the stablecoin USDC. They officially filed for an IPO on the NYSE. They're aiming to trade under the ticker CRCL. Good one for them. And the offering will include 24 million shares, priced between $24 and $26. No date set yet on the beginning of trading, but JP Morgan, Citigroup, and Goldman are all the lead book runners. They tried to go public in 2021 during the SPAC Mageddon, I guess you could call it, SPAC craziness, and they did not. They also at one point considered selling to Coinbase for $5 billion or Ripple. Neither of these plans came to fruition, obviously. They make money by earning interest on reserves that back USDC stablecoin. So I feel like stablecoin is like going to be the word of the summer. I don't know what the song of the summer is going to be, but I feel like stablecoin is something that just keeps coming up. You know, there's like a big stablecoin conference coming to New York this week. You have the stablecoin regulation going through. Any thoughts on these guys, Shy? Like this is an interesting one, right? Because you're not like directly in like investing in crypto per se, but this is sort of an infrastructure around that thematic. Does the infrastructure around crypto interest you at all?
It interests me the most if I had to choose, but it doesn't interest me per se because I don't know. I just who knows what crypto is going to look like in a couple
Yeah.
years. Things are moving so it's a wild, wild west right now there. So for Circle, for example, like it's not a shock. Everyone like you're seeing a bunch of fintech players go public as quickly as possible because guess what? It's a commodity of a space. Like every company has a specific niche within the fintechs world, but like, do they really? So I think that you're seeing a floodgate of fintech companies try to go public to capitalize on. Oh, like who knows what it's gonna tear for? Like Mark's at all-time high. We're bouncing. Like we missed our window 2 years ago. We can't miss this again. We got to go for it. Um, I don't know like the infrastructure is gonna look like in crypto, let alone like Circle, for example. So I think that's it's just going to be used as a vehicle to capitalize on Bitcoin price. That's honestly what I view like a lot of these crypto plays is just a vehicle to capture a Bitcoin price. So at the end of the day, why not just buy Bitcoin and not deal with all the bureaucracies of owning a stock like quarterly earnings reports, CEO doing something, or like what all the mess on like analyst notes. Like just buy the Bitcoin itself because they're all
Hmm.
just vehicles for it.
Yeah. And they have in Vegas right now, it's the big Bitcoin 2025 conference, which I
Hmm.
assume is a show of humanity. Usually the Bitcoin, I mean, I think they've gotten, we talked about this with a guest a few weeks ago, they've gotten a little more, less, what do you say, less clown suits and more suits. But that's going down in Vegas. Saylor was making some comments already that we're making waves around some of the regulatory stuff. So I'm sure we'll get some headlines out of that crowd as the week goes on. I did want to go back to this, quickly go back to agentic AI. And I meant to go to this before, but I caught this story about, and it hits on something we were sort of pontificating, Shy, about AI, agentic AI, and shopping. So MasterCard and Visa are trying to kind of build this AI shopping assistant into their interface. So they've both launched AI agent shopping tools. So it's going to allow some of these LLMs to not only recommend products, but also buy them for you. And how this will work, like MasterCard, for example, it's called Agent Pay. The AI agents can look around the internet, they can negotiate, and they can complete a purchase because they have tokenized payment data. So we were talking about this. We're like, well, how's the data going to work? I don't want, this tool to just willy-nilly be giving my credit card out. But that's how they're going to do it. Visa's product is called Intelligent Commerce. This is big. And then I started thinking about like, okay, who does this impact? Like personal assistants, I don't know, customer support, I mean, travel agents, I feel like we've been talking about the death of travel agents forever, and they still people still like to use them. But I think this is something that's very interesting. And I think this gets to what your hypothesis is on this, less about tap and touch, or you put it better than I did. But like, it's more about like people having awareness of your preferences and your needs, specifically like a Google would have that information. And then these agents automatically buying things and transacting for you. So I didn't catch that news on either of them, but that seems like a big deal.
This is the first time hearing about it, but this is not surprising. Again, this one announcement is going to disrupt 3 industries. You just called out. That's what I'm saying. Like the future is grim. Like there's going to be so much disruption. Agentic AI is going to disrupt so many people's jobs that just like it's violently underpriced right now. Let's just say that. So like unemployment, like everyone's, oh, it's going from 4.2 to 4.5, like going back and forth. Everyone's freaking out. Come on, it's gonna go to 7 to 8% potentially. Like I think so, and this is a great example for it, where you're right. Why do you need a personal assistant who makes like a certain percentage off of how much they spend, for example, or for a personal shopper, not a personal assistant, but and also like there's this semantic layer of being an assistant where there's user error issues, where like they interpret what the person says incorrectly and they go a totally different path. AI agents, it's impossible. It's purely based on your input. So they know exactly what you mean, and they actually get stronger and stronger the more data inflows they get, and they're going to get a certain point where it's going to be near perfect to your brain. And that's something that cannot be replicated by paying a salary for someone. And guess what? These AI agents, it's a one-time cost. You just pay up to build it up if you want to do it yourself. But if not, like just use the company's AI agent, and it's a minimal fee probably. It's probably just like add-on tax to your purchase, which again, like I also said this before, where I think there's going to be a 10% tax, then there's going to be a 2 to 3% AI agent tax that's associated with all purchases going forward on big ones. I think that's how a lot of these companies are going to make money on agentic AI, because again, you have to ask yourself, like, there's no more fixed business model is broken. That whole business model is broken. Licensing, seat-based, etc. How do these websites, e-commerce sites, make money on AI agents on consumption? It's by putting a certain percentage on the total bill. It doesn't have to be 2 to 3%. Maybe that's too much. Maybe it's half of 1%. Guess what? Real, for example, like if they make $5 billion a year in revenue and they just do 1% add-on fee, like consumers won't care about, oh, add 1%, like you help me visualize what I want to look like. There's a 3D replication of myself with the clothes I'm shopping for, and you just interacted everything for myself, where it's just like, whoa, seamless. That 1% on $5 billion is 50 million extra, like that on top line, and that's literally the greatest gross margins out there. So like I think that's kind of how I'm viewing the future, where like everything's gonna have AI agents, and as a consumer, super easy. But the rich are gonna get richer, the poor is gonna get more poor. There's gonna be a massive disconnect. So like everyone who's comfortable living in the circle of comfort that you've been accustomed to, get out of it, because that circle of comfort is gonna be the death nail of your coffin in the future, when it's going to be really hard to get opportunities, because AI agents are going to be replacing the workforce in ways that we've never seen before.
I mean, it's true. I just read, I think it was in Fortune or Forbes, it was a study about like AI agents and just use of these LLMs on a corporate level killing entry level jobs. How do you learn about, everyone has to start somewhere, right? And it's even, I remember when I was in college, I was frustrated. I was like, oh, I need all these internships to actually get a real job. And so there's all this gaming. But you don't need to hire someone super junior and like an apprentice level. How will people learn? Maybe it's like you need to teach yourself directly from that tool and do your own training so that you can enter at a higher level. But that's a big deal for kids graduating college now, where a lot of these, think about like how many people a Deloitte or a KPMG used to take right. I mean, I remember they would come to my college on our career fair and like I would know like 50 kids that would go work there easy. They were just like hiring these little robots. And that's all going away. It's scary, but the other way to look at it is, if you're a young person right now, you can learn anything right now. Like you can access anything, you could build things, but it is, to your point, way different. And I do think the other side of that in conversation that's interesting is, will these AI agents pay taxes? Because they're going to be earning all this revenue. It's not a human being, but like how are we going to get that value back into society? And I think that's going to be a big thing where like that they're going to be going to war about that in DC.
Well, I think there's going to for sure be taxes on agentic AI that's going to feed into a universal basic income for
Yeah.
everyone else. That's what's going to happen. And I think that everyone's going to, whatever the poverty level is for income that they're going to assume, like people in LA and New York are going to be screwed, but a lot of people out in Arkansas, Mississippi might do well. Well, it's just enough for, I don't know, 2,000 a month might be the universal basic income. That number feels right for some reason to me, but like, think about that, 24,000 a year. Does that do enough for like people's living situation? I don't
Yeah.
think so.
Not if
I
you
also
have to go to the hospital. It's a separate conversation.
exactly, yeah, separate
Yeah.
conversation. But like, also think that AI is deflationary, for example. Like, so like,
Yeah.
I do think prices will come down,
Yeah.
which could be a full flywheel effect on society. Where back like 20 years ago, things were super cheap. They could become ridiculous price now, inflation, etc. I think in 20 years, it's going to be much lower because the deflationary environment that AI is going to create. Maybe it won't go lower, but it's capped, and everyone else's income might go up. Who knows? I don't think it's going to be that route, but
Yeah.
the world's changing fast, like really fast, and I think that it's really important for everyone to like figure out what you want to do personally in the future and plan accordingly, because you have that opportunity right now to capture eyeballs or capture something for yourself before it gets replicated, because by the time it gets replicated, that headwind turns to a massive wall that you might be able to climb, but it's going to get trickier and trickier the more you wait.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And yeah, it's funny. I had a conversation, like my friend called me last night, like 10 p.m., and we were like talking about this because I had posted something to my Instagram story about like an app I wanted to build, and I was like kind of like half vibe coding it. It's like I'm a loser, so I was doing it on Memorial Day. But we were talking about this, and it's scary, but it's also really exciting. And so I actually did see this like heartwarming tweet this morning about this little girl who reads The Economist, and she will pull it up, but she wrote this letter and was like, everything feels scary. Like, can you cover more good news? And I know a lot of this stuff is grim, but I'm curious I think it's important to kind of spotlight that it is scary because it's going to fundamentally disrupt like everything. On the flip side, like what like good news are you excited about, Shy? I know you have the things you're interested in, but like the other side of this, do you think the positive aspect of this could outweigh the negative, or do you think this is like a get ready people because it's getting real and it might not be fun for you?
All right, yeah, I mean that's good exercise. Half glass full of this.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna force restructuring of institutional parts of our life. And what do I mean by that? I think the school system's flawed. It's been flawed for a long time. The amount of mental capital I had to use to get my degree in international business and finance, with the making of modern worlds, English classes on like essays on something about history or something that's way off course than what business is, like it was wild to me. So I think that they're gonna be forced to create tailored classes towards today's reality instead of what it's been like for decades. Because like I said, the world has innovated, the world has constantly changed, but a lot of the courses have not. In high
Yeah.
school, I had no financial literacy in my courses. That was a huge mistake. Luckily, I had influences in my personal life that helped me, but if I didn't, I'd be lagging. There's no world where there shouldn't be a purely an investing class in high school at 17 or
Yeah.
18. How to do your taxes. Wait, some kind of not woodworking classes, but household
I
creation.
took woodworking.
Woodworking
Did
is fun, but like, how often do you do woodworking? Like, I would like to know how to do like household items
Oh
type things
yeah.
of creation. Like,
Yeah, like what screw do I use for what? That would have been nice to know.
totally. Or at 16 years old, at SQL coding class or some kind of
Yeah.
like, I think there's ways to change education now because you have to tailor young minds towards the future we're about to enter, or they're gonna be left behind. I think that's the half glass positivity of it, where structurally things will have to change to keep up, and it hasn't been ruffled or shaken in quite some time. And I think now it's gonna be forced to do that. And also colleges.
Yeah.
I think colleges will come on consolidate. There's not gonna be as many colleges out there because you just don't need a degree anymore in the world we're about to enter. Because what's your degree going to do? You can't get a job right out of college. These AI agents are replacing intermediate jobs. So ownership, business ownership is going to be even more important than getting a high entry job at a great company. Like that won't matter as much.
Yeah.
It's going to be business ownership. So they're going to have to teach entrepreneurship in college, but as an entrepreneur, it doesn't make sense to be in debt to learn that education. So like something has to give.
I ask people all the time who have kids that are like in their teens. I'm like, would you be pissed if they didn't want to go to college? And they all say the same thing. They're like, no, as long as they have a plan, like whatever. So that is like, I mean, growing up, if I was like to my parents, like, hey guys, I'm piecing out of this journey, that would not have, that would not have flown. So it's crazy to think about how fast things are changing. And you brought up something interesting about higher ed, which I noticed when I was in college, and that's that the brightest kind of business innovators and minds aren't usually teaching finance. You know, like they're, or I guess I'll rephrase that. The brightest of like the contemporary time, like the people at the bleeding edge, are not teaching at a university. They're at a company. So what you have is very smart people, but they're teaching curriculum that's 10 years old. Like I remember I didn't even major in marketing, but I had friends who did, and like hearing about the stuff they learned was way different. Like I graduated and we were doing like Google ads and SEO, and like that wasn't even in the curriculum. So I think that's unique about business, because if you think about like a top scientist, they probably are at a university. Business is different though. They're out there making their bag, and it's gonna be hard to learn business in those places because it's so competitive.
Yeah, I mean, you can't teach business in a sandbox, if that makes sense, because there's so many variable moving pieces in the business world that you just can't teach someone something binary and that's how it's going to be. It's a very fluid movement. It's a spectrum. Business is on a spectrum. So the best way to learn, like, succeed in that environment is real world experience. And it's not in a classroom where they teach you what case study, what's your answer, because that case study is very binary. We don't live in a binary world. We live in a fluid world. So for to go off what your friend said, like my fiance and I are on the same page. We're not going to brute force education, college education to our kids. Like we're going to give them the option of like, this is a lump sum you have.
Yeah.
Do build something yourself, present a business plan to us to green light it, but you're not forced to go to college if you don't want to. And like, you don't think that it's going to help you get further along in life. I think that's a philosophy for a lot of young
Yeah.
millennials, going to be a philosophy for Gen Z. So I think
I
Grand
love it.
Canyon
I'm
University,
picturing
you
like
might
Shark.
short that stock. I
I'm
don't
pic-
know. It's
uh, I'm picturing like Shark Tank at the Boloor household, and there's like three toddlers presenting their ideas, vying for love, attention, and funding for their future startup. I think that's so funny. But I think that's that makes sense. We have a few more minutes. I want to talk about like earnings we have coming up. We have Okta, we have Box. We also have some retailers, Costco, coming up later in the week, Abercrombie and Fitch, which we talked about, Gap. So a lot of interesting people reporting earnings. Shay, looking forward this week, is there anything in particular that you're looking towards as you plan things out on your side?
Nvidia days tomorrow.
Oh my God!
That's
Oh my God! Obviously,
so that's the
that was a
major
test.
one. That
Yeah.
was a test. I passed.
I love how I called out, like, I'm like, we got Abercrombie and Fitch, and you're like, Nvidia?
We,
Ever heard
Nvidia,
of those guys?
the Super Bowl of earnings. Yeah, Nvidia's a big one tomorrow. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if there's some profit taking today ahead of. I haven't even seen what the market. Yeah, QQ's up 1.5%. I wouldn't
Yeah.
be surprised if there's some profit taking ahead of tomorrow, because again, they are they're not just a chip company. They are truly a litmus test of where the AI economy is at. And I think they're going to deliver tomorrow. I think that they're finding ways around that loophole, China loophole issue that's not going to hit them as hard as the $5 billion hit they announced already. So they already front ran the headwind. So I think that the worst was priced in the stock. It's at 134 now. I think that Jensen is clearly getting ahead of the training data headwind narrative, and the inference data tailwind is nobody knows the one-to-one of headwind for training data, the tailwind for inference data. Nobody knows the one-to-one, but I'm banking the inference data tailwind is going to be a lot higher than the headwind for the training data. So them opening up the MV link, which was huge for them during Compute X, to the hyperscalers was a huge sign for me that Jensen is fully aware of like what's uh w- fully aware of the narrative that's hitting Nvidia stock, because him opening up NV Link was sending a clear message to everyone that you don't need to go all in on Nvidia hardware, aka Google with TPU, Amazon with Trainium, Microsoft, etc. So like you don't have to go all in on the Nvidia hardware. That's fine, but you do need their Nvidia infrastructure to make it all work. That's what I mean by the inference data is going to be much higher the tail end than the headwind for the hardware, because the hardware is just the first stage. Everything else to make sure the hardware works is going to be so important in the future. And NVIDIA owns all of that essentially. So the way I like to say is like NVIDIA doesn't own the AI train, they own the rails. Everyone else can do the train back and forth, but guess what? You're going to be building it on top of NVIDIA, aka the rails. So I think that tomorrow's print will be just fine. I think you're already seeing signs that the top four cloud providers already collectively deployed over 3 million Blackwell GPUs over the coming cycle. I think you're gonna get some commentary about Rubin and Rubin Ultra that maybe gets released next year. If that's the case, it's gonna catch a major bid because I think it's gonna be priced at 2027.
Mm.
And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if like they catch a bid from tomorrow's report, or if not, it might just be consolidating due to the headwinds ish narrative. But like, I don't see the headwind issue at all. I really don't. I had an argument with someone I respect a lot in the space like a couple months ago. He thought that this stock was going to 50. I'm like, why? He
Whoa.
thought the gross margins were going to break 60%. He viewed them as a hardware goggles. It's not a hardware company, but I respect him a lot. He knows the space. So like, I was like, am I missing something? But I really don't think I am. So I think tomorrow's will provide us more of a litmus test of where the AI economy is, but Nvidia is doing just fine, company
Yeah,
wise.
I'm glad we got to Nvidia because like it was at the top of my list, and then the hour just flew by. I do want to end with this chart I saw, uh, and it's comparing. It's the most, I think, yeah, the most revenue efficient company in the world. Look at OnlyFans just absolutely mopping the floor with Nvidia. So you know, as you think about your future children, there's lots of career paths you could take, and you know, some are different, some are chips, some are other things. This blew my mind. Makes a lot of sense. We will be back tomorrow to check in on NVIDIA, on everything else, any new tariff drama, which world leader might get slapped this time around. We'll see. We'll get to that more tomorrow because I want to talk about that. But tune in tomorrow, Wednesday, NVIDIA Day, Super Bowl Day, and we will see you guys bright and early tomorrow morning.